Hello, everyone. I am Northern Westman, and you're listening to the Disciple Hour, episode 7. I am joined here by my friend Ian, and today we are going to discuss the topic Love of money is the root of all evil. That is First Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. And after that, we will review a short video of a pregnant white woman who at first glance seems to be stealing a bike, like a city rental bike, from a bunch of black guys. Although that story has been thoroughly debunked, she paid for it and they actually lied about her, trying to steal the bike from them. And she was socially lynched. But then it appears that she is now grifting off the incident. And this kind of demonstrates the white guilt and the white noir in our population and the radical, well, rabid individualism in our people. And so, but we'll start with the biblical topic. Ian, my friend, how's it going?
I'm doing all right. Glad to be here, Northern Westman.
So am I. This is a very interesting topic. For the love of money is the root of all evil. I should maybe read the full verse. That's verse 10, chapter 6. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which, while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Now, this verse kind of seems like a 180, like a U turn from what you can read between the lines in the Old Testament. The first act of evil we see in the entire Bible is in Genesis with Cain and Abel. Well, no, okay. I mean, first it's the serpent, right, who deceives Eve, but then it's Cain and Abel, and the story of Cain and Abel, if you can't remember, folks, Abel, he sacrificed livestock to God, but Cain sacrificed fruits and vegetables to God. And God, he basically ignored Cain's sacrifice. And then Cain was so jealous of Abel that he murdered his brother Abel. So here you can read between the lines that jealousy was the root of this evil. Then you have another story of Joseph and his brothers, Jacob's sons. Joseph, he had these dreams, like a visions, and he saw himself as the son, and his brothers worshiping him and stuff like that. And his brothers, they were so jealous of him that they sold him into slavery. They didn't sell him for the money. They were going to kill him at first, but then they saw like a camel, like a caravan of slavers. Of was it Arabs or was it Chaldeans? I can't remember. Anyway, they were
Were
headed
they
to Egypt.
Egyptians?
Sorry, what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was going to say maybe they were Egyptians. I don't remember offhand, but
No,
yeah.
I can't remember. But anyway, they were headed towards Egypt, and his brothers, they basically thought, well, I mean, if we're gonna get rid of him, we might as well sell him for money, and so they did, and bloodied his cloak and gave it to Jacob, their father. Anyway, the hidden subtext is jealousy was the root of this evil act, and so I always thought that jealousy was the root of all evil. And now I guess I could add to this the story of Esau and Jacob. Jacob, he tricked his brother into selling his birthright. right? It's kind of a scumbag thing to do. And then there was like hatred and jealousy, between the two brothers. And so, from these stories, I always just assumed that, oh, God is telling us that jealousy is the root of all evil. And, I've seen that um, in my short life, relatively short lifespan, that jealousy really seems to drive people to do evil things. You see these people who claim to, they call themselves whatever, liberals, social justice warriors, environmentalists, whatever. They use all kinds of pretexts to hide a very malicious underlying goal. And their goal is really just to tear down. Look at remember in 2020, after the death of George Floyd, the resulting summer of anti-white terror, where BLM and Antifa just destroyed city after city in the US, and this spread across the West to Great Britain as well, and even to Iceland, where I live. Uh, these people, they didn't care about racial justice. They I don't even think they care about George Floyd at all. They simply cared about destroying. That's what they wanted to do. And they used the death of George Floyd as a pretext to destroy and to humiliate white people. They blackmailed them into taking the knee, filmed them, threatening to dox them, etc. People were terrified and took the knee. The police took the knee. This was all done through a pretext of so-called racial justice, when in fact it was just pure anti-white hatred, just deep-rooted jealousy and envy. And so, I always thought that jealousy and envy, or at least jealousy, was the root of all evil. But then this verse in Timothy comes, like I said, like a 180, just claims that the love of money is the root of all evil. And then you have to reevaluate everything. Um, and we were doing some digging um, regarding the interpretation here. And we really like Ellicott's commentary for English readers. It's really good. Maybe I should just read it. So, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And he says, some would water down this strong expression by translating the Greek words by, quote unquote, a root of all evil, unquote, instead of, quote, the root, unquote, making this alteration on the ground of the article by not being prefixed to the Greek word rendered root. This change, however, grammatically is unnecessary, as the article disappears before the predicate, in accordance with the well-known rule respecting subject and predicate. He continues, St. Paul had just written in 1 Timothy 6:9 of men being plunged into destruction and perdition, the awful consequence of yielding to those lusts into which the fatal love of riches had guided them. He now sums up the teaching contained in these words by pithily remarking, yes, for the love of money is the root of all evil, meaning thereby not that every evil necessarily must come from the love of money, but that there is no conceivable evil which can happen to the sons and daughters of men which may not spring from covetousness, a love of gold and wealth. All right. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think that what you were saying about jealousy in the Old Testament, or envy, perhaps more specifically, um, being the root of all evil versus the love of money, it seems that what he just said there, covetousness, is really the common thread that ties those two things together.
Mhm,
I think we talked on a previous podcast about the commandment, thou shalt not covet, which,
mhm,
just quick review for anyone who doesn't understand. Covetousness is when somebody else has something and you want to take that specific thing that they have.
mhm,
So, like, if you see somebody who has something that you don't have and you want to take it away from them and have it for yourself, that's covetousness. And to tie that to the summer of anti-white terror that Northern Westman was talking about, I mean, it was very clear that these people didn't were just motivated by this desire to destroy Western civilization because its projections made them angry. And I think a lot of people, when they know that they can't create things like that, it makes them feel bad. It makes them feel as though they're somehow being demeaned by its very existence. And so they know that if they can't create it, they can only destroy it so that it doesn't affront them in some way. And so I think that a lot of that does come from, that can be tied back to covetousness as well. You people see the glories of Western civilization, and either they want to take them from the people who built it, or they want to destroy it so that nobody can have it. And I think that you can, and you could say that it is a love of money, a love of resources, which are finite, of course. And so that's as we've seen in today's world, where covetousness is encouraged and even stoked on by anti-whites in power, that it does lead to all kinds of evil.
mhm. Yeah, I second that. And I just want to say, I don't mean to tie everything with race, but we can't look past this. Our civilization was nearly destroyed in 2020, and the root of all of this was, like you said, covetousness. And so we have to talk about it. That's my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you want to talk about the love of money, I mean, I think, as I was kind of alluding to, I mean, we've seen how even throughout recent history, I mean, there's been this demonization of, like, the rich. It's like, oh, those rich people, yeah, they have all these things, and they don't deserve to have them. They're no better than you, but they just got lucky. And it's like hating, quote unquote, the rich is like a cool thing to do. And I've even seen some people online saying, like, Jesus sure had some nasty things to say about the rich, but I don't think he ever said, Jesus. Well, no, yeah, I know, and Jesus never said something like, yeah, all those rich MFers, soak them. Like, he never said anything like that. He just said, basically, that, I think he said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He's not saying that being rich is sinful or bad, but that, you know, for those who have great wealth on earth, it's very hard for them to prioritize, godly living, prioritize the way of Jesus Christ, because it requires putting that ahead of one's own earthly wealth. And, you know, the desire for resources, of course, is infinite. And when you've accumulated many, it's very difficult to give that up. So, I mean, to tie this back to what we were saying about jealousy or envy in the Old Testament, I mean, I think the mess I guess the message we can take away from that is that, God will favor some people on earth in certain ways over others. He will give blessings to certain people, and he won't give to others. I mean, I'm sure anybody listening can think of ways in which somebody else has something they don't have and they wish they did, and that's just part of the human experience, that we're all going to see somebody who has something that we wish we had. But, the key to living a godly life is to be content with what God has given you and to accept what God has given you. And if you do,
Mhm.
you know, want to make changes in your life, then, make the effort to do it, but don't but it's wrong to be resentful toward the person who has what you don't have, because that's where evil takes a foothold.
Yeah, amen. I want to go back to this verse into the Greek. Strong's concordance is the love of money is translated from the Greek word philargyria, and this is G5365. Love of money or avarice. It can be understood as avarice, and if the definition of avarice is excessive or insatiable desire for wealth or gain. And two synonyms given here are greediness and cupidity. But this word philargyria, it only appears once in the entire New Testament in Strong's Concordance. Philargyria, avarice, like insatiable desire for wealth and gain. And yeah, I can understand why that can only lead to evil. It's like an
Yeah.
insane covetousness. So yeah, of course that will lead to evil. But and
Yeah. And I mean,
I
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, yeah. And I mean, we can see how even among many so-called Christian leaders today, there's, in many ways, they have sort of figuratively sold their souls for a little more money and a little more
Mhm.
influence. I mean, many of these, Christian organizations have basically tried to uh, conform to the ways of the world by spreading, anti-white messages, or messages that, serve the people in power by, saying, yeah, we as Christians, we shouldn't have, you shouldn't care about race. Well, it's provided that you're white, at least. Um, they'll say that, like, if your church is, quote, too white, then that's a problem. And,
Mhm.
this is part of the anti-white messaging that the regime, you know, puts in the puts into our society, and they just go right along with it, because they know that if they stand against that, then, they'll be persecuted. They know that they'll be, um, they know that it's going to cost them money and opportunities, so they just decide to maintain their positions of comfort and influence by conforming to the ways of the world. And I think you could argue that that really is a love of money, because I'm sure that a lot of these high-ranking people within the church organizations, they do probably make a good amount of money from doing what they do, since they get to write books and they get to appear on TV sometimes, even, or write articles in prominent publications, and people treat them as though they were the voice of Christianity itself. So they get to be glorified here on earth, but, is the message they're spreading truly a Christian one, or is it just one that serves the people in power?
That's a very good thought. I can expand on that. I kind of despise these mega churches because they're just so commercialized, and these huge mega churches, they know that if they start preaching true Christianity, which, like we've talked about on this podcast, is like this low time preference religion. If they start to preach that message, people will just leave. But folks, that is the whole point. I mean, Jesus, if you remember, he did all of the kinds of miracles, and people, they just clapped like seals, like, "Arr!" And then when he told them, sell all your belongings and stuff like that, and talked about heaven and hell, and uh, basically doing God's will, not to live your life for yourself, etc. Then people rejected him until they crucified him. And so, these churches, they ultimately are now serving mammon instead of God. And Jesus warned about this. You can't serve two lords. You can either serve mammon or God, not both. And there's this Switzerland organization called OCG, the Organic Christ Generation. Their motto is Die neue Welt ist ohne Geld, meaning the new world is without money. And I like their approach. They know that money just complicates things and often corrupts relationships. And so all of their work is pretty much voluntary. They, that is something that more Christians should think about. I'm not
Indeed.
talking, I'm not, trying to preach some, socialist, communes or anything, nothing like that. But, these mega churches, they have to go. That's what I'm saying. They just complicate things. They spoil things. I'm never going to join a mega church. I'm all
Yeah.
for these small communities. You can do trade, of course. Buy the bread from your Christian friend over here instead of the atheist or whatever. Sure, but we really need to step away from this capitalistic mindset, in my opinion. Uh, Thinking in only a few years ahead, quarters of a year, instead of thinking in decades or even centuries.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just I know that people kind of get caught up in this like sort of capitalism versus socialism dichotomy, which I think is a false one. I mean,
Yes.
like people say, "Oh, Jesus was a socialist." Like, no, he wasn't. He never said that not to get all libertarian on you here, but like he never said that there should be some entity that uses force to extract resources from others, then redistribute them as they see fit. Like he never advocated for anything like that. But I
Mhm.
think what Jesus and Christianity in general does call us to is lives of humility, lives of
Mhm.
contentment, where yes, it's not sinful to accumulate resources and pass them on to the next generation, but when those become ends in themselves, that's where you're losing sight of what's really important, because
Yep.
you know these things are good insofar as they can be used to serve the gospel, but
Yep.
when essentially you're ignoring Jesus Christ and making it about securing your own position of comfort on earth, that's where it becomes sinful. But that's a finer distinction that a lot of people don't make because they get caught up in this dichotomy.
Yeah, it becomes an idolatry in of itself when you are only thinking about money. Like, if you are listening and you have financial resources, good for you. But I would encourage you to do something productive with them to, help out your community, etc. Spread the gospel, make your town safer, etc. Yeah. Um, but if there is nothing else to talk about on this topic, I mean, we could go on, but don't want to drag it too much. If you have any final thoughts on this, Ian, uh, then please go ahead. Then we'll just get to the next topic.
I think we've covered it pretty well. Just in short, yeah, like what
Hmm.
Northern Westman said, it's certainly good to accumulate wealth so that you can pass on an inheritance to the next generation, but as long as it's got the right focus. I mean, just earlier today, I was reading about the verse, "Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you as well." I mean, God will provide for those who love Him. God will provide for those who keep their focus on Him, even if it doesn't mean you'll get rich necessarily, but it means He'll provide the things that you need.
Hmm.
So it's important to remember that God should always come first and not, like Westman said, it not make an idol out of money or resources or accumulation. So I think that's where it becomes the root of all evil.
Yeah, he will provide you with manna, like in the desert, manna,
Yes.
and that's what the OCG believes in. And I've seen their, fruit. By their fruit, thou shalt know them. Families with on average like 8 or 10 children, and they're working. They do not have quote unquote six-figure salaries to put it in American terms, but they can be teachers or something, and just it's clear that God is providing for them. And women having children into their 40s, late 40s, it's like, yeah, God is with you, you know. So yeah, but all right, those were good final thoughts. I'm gonna share this video here.
A tussle over a city bike gone viral. The 90-second clip shows a hospital worker, Sarah Comrie, straddling a two-wheeler. A man next to her claiming it's his.
This is not your bike. Please help me.
This footage led the woman's employer, New York City Health and Hospitals, to put the woman on leave as it conducts an investigation. Now her attorney told us she's getting bombarded with threats.
Every part of that story is incorrect, starting with my client is not a racist. 2, my client did not take anybody else's bike.
Justin Marino says the proof is in the receipts that we examined. They show a rental for a bike of 560-3915 that lasted 1 minute. We froze the video to get a good look. The code on the bike that they both want reads 560-3915. We asked City Bike to confirm her rental and if anyone else reserved it around that time. Marino says that's impossible.
That confirms that the bike she was on was definitively rented by her.
We don't know for sure what happened before this video started. Marino says on Saturday, Comrie wrapped up a 12-hour shift at Bellevue, walked up to that rack, paid, and then pulled the bike back. He says that's when the men approached. About 30 seconds in, the 6-month pregnant woman says this.
I'm not touching you.
A comment that's led to online heckling, along with this moment where she cries.
How dare you, judge someone in that circumstance based on the conditions that she was going through at that time?
We don't know who the men in the video are. The NYPD reiterated today that there are no 911 calls or reports on file for this incident, and it's asking anyone who thinks that they were victimized to come forward. Marino says that his goal is to challenge the narrative and clear her name.
There was nothing other than the difference in skin color that suggests race had anything to do with it.
The video ends with Comrie getting on another bike. Marino gave us that receipt as well. He says it proves she rode that bike home.
We're hoping that, her employer is not going to violate her rights, and if they do, they'll be added to the people that we sue.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
All right, did you hear all of that?
Yeah, I think so. Although I didn't quite get what was the comment that the woman made that they were all angry about. They said that comment was the one that sparked a lot of backlash or something.
I missed that. I totally missed that because I had not seen this clip. I just looked for a clip that showed the incident, but what struck me was that her attorney, the first thing he noted is he said, "Well, she's not a racist." Like, oh my God, the first thing.
Yeah.
She's not a racist. By the way, folks,
Yeah.
the term racist, I kid you not, this is an anti-white slur. If this was a Chinese woman, he would not have said this. Mrs. Chong is not a racist. Mrs. Hernandez is not a racist. Mrs. Alu Abdab Khalib Kali is not a racist. Just whatever. The first thing he said.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody were more explicitly racial. If like, if it's this is the thing when you're in the West and you're living under this anti-white regime. I mean, the first thing you have to do is prove that you're not a quote unquote racist. It's
Hmm.
like if they it's like saying I'm not a honky. What are you talking about? Like, I deny those charges completely. It's like you can't
Yeah.
escape the charge of being a slur. And for those who don't understand the word racist, the meaning is, in least as concerns white people, is that you're not anti-white enough. So,
Yeah.
if you're a white person who takes your own side, then you're not being sufficiently anti-white, and that makes you a quote unquote racist. That's what the term actually means. So when people haggle over the meaning of this word or whether someone falls into this category, it's really a trap, because essentially you're trying to prove that you're sufficiently anti-white, which no group of people should have to do. No one should have to prove, or no one should have to prove their bona fides by proving that they don't take their own side.
Yeah, good point. I talked about this. I think it was podcast number 3. It's the one where I was solo. I asked the audience to close their eyes and to imagine the archetype of the racist. And was he white? Yes. You always think of, I've done this test, on my family members. Uh, they all think of a white person when they think of a quote unquote racist. And that's because our subconscious minds have been conditioned into seeing a racist, quote unquote racist, as a white person who is just mean to non-whites, right? Or not just that, just has, is not even white guilted or anything. Oh, that's enough to be branded this anti-white slur. Wanting to preserve your culture, yeah, you get branded with this anti-white slur, etc. Okay, so this was the first thing that I noted. The second is, yeah, he talks about the actual topic. She didn't take anyone's bike, but I mean, I just want to highlight that in his mind, it was more important to vindicate her of the accusation of being quote unquote racist, this anti-white slur. Again, just further demonstrating yet again that we live in an anti-white society, and that, like you said, Ian, you will never be anti-white enough. And then, goodness sake, then he goes on, he said, nothing other than skin color suggests that race had anything to do with it. It's like, shut up, man. Race had everything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I first saw this, I honestly was gaslighted. She doesn't sound very convincing. She's kind of, just shouting, help. And, these black guys, they're so, the word I'm looking for is like, uh, they sound, like they have the righteous moral high ground. They sound very sure of their position. Like, geez, the word I'm looking for is
I get what you're saying. They seem
certain.
like.
You know, I
Sorry, what
mean,
was that?
certain. I mean, it sounds like they're very certain that no, she's indeed stealing our bike. So they
Yes.
were just lying through their teeth. And sadly, I'm admitting this. I believed them for a moment. And even though I'm well aware of biospiritual racial differences, um, and I know that these anti-white thugs they lie, they lie all the time. Still, I was gaslighted this time. because they were just so convincing. Oh yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Convincing. They really sounded convincing. But then it turns out, I mean, she did in fact rent the bike, and they were just lying through their teeth, filming it, lying with such assurance. That makes me very angry.
Yeah, I'll just support what you said there. I mean, if you take the clip in isolation, look like it does look like what they say happened did happen, that she was stealing bikes. I mean, the woman does come across as kind of like she's acting and trying to put on a show
Yeah,
for people,
yeah,
like help, and even the crying, how it kind of comes and goes. Like maybe that was her, just a tactic that many women can fall back on in order to garner sympathy, and like it's not that, obviously, I think most people know women do that sometimes. They try to use tears to manipulate people or to get the outcome they want. But I mean, you know, as we know, she did in fact rent the bike, and we know that she did have the right to use it. And then they're saying to her, "You're not getting this bike." I mean, that's pretty. I mean, imagine if you're a woman, you can't physically overpower, a grown man, even in most cases. So she had to rely on whatever tactics she could to try and get them to relent. But
mm-hmm.
so, I mean,
Yeah,
I can understand in her position why she might do that.
mm-hmm.
So yes, it's like, I can understand if people weren't convinced by her behavior in the clip that maybe she was just sort of putting on a show. But I mean, so were they. I mean, and they had no right to take that bike from her because,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't pay for it. But acting as though they had the moral high ground in the thing, like it's just I think it kind of indicates that a lot of these non-white anti-whites know that that the media and the public will be on their side
Mm-hmm.
against a white person because that's the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
They understand that their power comes from the pretense of powerlessness, where they like, I mean, when you were talking about in the previous podcast where you're discussing that man harassing these white people on the subway, he says like, "This is America. I'm above you." Like, I think that kind of was a very revealing statement. Like, he knows that society holds him in a higher position morally
Yep.
and such, and therefore he has the right to make demands that the white people can't, because he's given the moral high ground
Mm-hmm.
in this anti-white system we live under. And I think the men in that video, they were the same way. They know that all they have to do is take a video of it and the public's going to side with them and that they can get away with it. I mean, it's even pretty telling that no one has pressed charges against the men in that video that, as that clip showed, they said, "We don't know who the men in this video are." So it's like, has anyone even tried to find
Wow.
these guys and prosecute them for attempted theft? I mean, that's pretty egregious there, isn't it? Like, no
Yeah.
one's tried to identify them. No one's tried to hold them accountable for trying to steal a bike, even though clearly that's what's happened here. But but the real story's become trying to clear this woman's name and that she's not a quote unquote racist. So, I mean, it's kind of funny how what should be the story here, which is an attempted theft, is actually now an attempt is now just trying to. It's the question is whether this woman's going to get fired from her job for simply defending her right to use a bike that she paid for. So that just shows how the whole thing has become inverted.
You had some very good points. And yeah, I just want to say, while you were talking, I did realize, like, yeah, we agree that she kind of seemed strange. And now, while you were talking, I think I realized, I might be wrong, but I think that she has never been in this situation. I think, a white woman being, ganged upon by a group of anti-white blacks. She was definitely afraid, knowing that they're lying. And, if she holds anti-white beliefs, she probably thinks that blacks are, so wonderful, and they're so oppressed and blah, blah, blah. And they're, you know, she, at this moment, she's realizing that these people, that, not all blacks, but these particular blacks there, they had no shame, no problem with lying through their teeth, accusing her of being a thief. And I bet she was just afraid, really, really afraid, not trying to sound or seem quote unquote racist, probably trying to villainy signal herself out of this situation, not wanting to condemn these thugs. And that might be the reason why she was acting so strange. I bet if they had been white, she would have had no problem, um, accusing them of being, malevolent, etc., gaining the moral high ground. I think she just had a real difficulty gaining the moral high ground. And so, screaming for help in this kind of strange way, it just seemed so off. It didn't really seem sincere because I think she wasn't being sincere. She was like, conflicting morality. She knows that she's right. She paid for the bike. However, the anti-white narrative tells her that, oh, the blacks, they are so oppressed. You know, should I just give them the bike? And she was like, yeah, had this dual morality, cognitive dissonance, if you will. That might be the reason. I don't know. I'm just speculating here. But
No, I think you may be right about that. That's a very good observation.
yeah,
Like she doesn't know how to assert herself without, because she's afraid of stepping on a landmine and saying the wrong thing.
I mean, deep down, every white person who isn't a 70 IQ retard knows that, if you, like you said, you can step on a landmine with when it comes to anti-whites, especially the anti-white blacks. Like we've seen, they know that they are, placed above whites in this anti-white social hierarchy. And yeah, I mean, deep down, I feel bad for this woman, but she has to repent for, if I'm going to side with her, because there is this thing here. See, she's not an honest individual. Her donation, her fund, wasn't it GoFundMe? It had the initial goal of raising 50,000 US dollars. When they passed the $50,000 mark, they raised it to $75,000. And when they achieved that sum, they raised it again to 100,000 US dollars. So it seems like she's grifting off of this. And that's, I can't honor that. That is so dishonorable.
Yeah, and I think it's also telling that in her in the statement on the funding page, they were saying, she was talking about how like she's always believed in helping like underserved communities or whatever the meme pathogens are about, non-white communities supposedly having it harder than white people. Like it seemed, and she's a strong believer in equity and racial justice. I mean, these are all anti-white meme pathogens which serve the anti-white narrative. So I think what's very telling about this incident is that it shows how individualistic white people are. And, that woman was targeted because of her race, in my opinion. And I think that, as we discussed earlier, those anti-white thugs knew that they could try that on her because she's white, and she won't necessarily know how to fight back because she'll be kind of paralyzed by, the conflict between the narrative in her head and the reality that's unfolding before her. So, even after that, she can't say, like, she can't acknowledge that, there was this was an anti-white victimization. She has to still say, like, I side with the groups that victimized me here. So, and that I'm not And, obviously we aren't going to demonize an entire group of people based on the bad behavior of certain individuals, but like, the fact that she can't even stick up for herself, or can't even,
Yeah.
the fact that she feels she has to make concessions to that anti-white narrative shows how individualistic our people are, and how, she doesn't recognize that, that was just something that happened to her, but it could have been anybody. It could have been any white person who experienced that. And, they could have been, any white person could be randomly targeted the way she was. So it's not about her as an individual. It's about the greater picture of what's going on here.
Yeah. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's this rabid individualism in the white race. She was definitely, like you said, she was definitely targeted for her race. And these sons of, I'm not going to say it, these thugs, I'll just call them thugs, these anti-white thugs, they had no issue with accusing a pregnant woman of stealing their bike. Again, like, we don't racially, we're not gonna, blame a whole race for this or that. But when you think of someone stealing bikes, like, in all honesty, you don't think of pregnant white women. You think of another group of people. Okay, just not going to say it. It's just the whole thing is just so ridiculous. The notion of a pregnant white woman stealing a bike from black guys, that is BS. And this is, you talked about the rabid individualism, and the deracination of our people. The white race is just a deracinated gene pool at this point. She was definitely targeted for her race, and deep down she knows it. Deep down, every white person knows it, but they won't say it because they're deracinated. And we are also dehumanized. There is this white noir in Western kind as a whole. You can just see how conflicted she was during this social lynching. She couldn't defend herself. She couldn't accuse them of being thieves because of the anti-white morality, based on falsehoods, of course, but still a false morality, but still a morality, an anti-white morality. She was trapped within the anti-white narrative. She couldn't defend herself. White people cannot defend her, or they make some abstractionist reasons for doing it. This just shows, this is just yet another display of how deracinated and dehumanized we are, and that we really need to cure our people of this deep-rooted white guilt and white noir, and give our people a positive identity. We are not against non-whites. We are against anti-whiteism. It's an ideology. And we welcome everyone of all racial backgrounds, religious backgrounds, to help us put an end to this evil. And I think I'll leave it there.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'm reminded of one verse that I always comes to mind, is that Jesus said, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." And I think it's interesting that one of the words he includes there is truth, because I mean, I think that all truth is God's truth is one way I interpret that. It's like the idea of logos, even. Of course, that's a whole another thing, but like, just reality is all part of God's design, part of God's plan. So I mean, I think as Christians, we should value the truth. And what's really telling about this incident is that it shows that many people really aren't concerned with the truth. Many people who are anti-white, they don't matter the truth of the situation isn't important to them. As soon as I saw what happened, this false anti-white narrative came to mind that they genuinely believe that some pregnant white woman tried to steal a bike from a bunch of men who are larger than her and more and stronger than her, and that she knew she could just get away with it because she's a white woman who's supposedly privileged in the society, and that she could just use her tears to get what she wants. And for some of us, we see who actually understand what's going on, those of us who aren't anti-white and who don't believe these lies, we can see that that's patently false. Like, anybody who would try that is stupid, because that's not going to happen, especially not today in this anti-white climate. But I mean, people live in with this false narrative, this lying narrative that white people are just throwing their weight around because they know that they can get away with whatever, because simply by being white, when really the complete opposite is true. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that these people who propagate and believe this anti-white narrative are, their father is the devil, the father of lies. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. It's just evil.
Amen.
And some people, yes, there's a certain YouTuber who I don't know if I should name here, but like when this happened, he jumped to conclusions and started going off on how this shows how white women just are manipulative and they just steal everything and there's bad people, and it shows how society privileges white people, et cetera, et cetera. And then when the truth came out a day later, he basically just kind of said, okay, I was wrong, sorry about that, and then just moved on from it. Like, he never questioned his fundamental premises about or the narratives that he's imbibed or that he propagates. He just kind of said, yeah, sorry about that, I guess I'll just forget about it and move on. So I mean, some people really just aren't concerned with the truth. They aren't concerned with accuracy, fairness, or justice even. It's just all about what villainy signaling will earn me status, what will destroy Western civilization, what will gain me favor in the now, what position should I take. And I think we need to rise above that. If we're to be truly Christian people, we should care about actual justice and actual fairness and actual truth. Yes. Because Jesus is the truth.
Amen.
I just wanted to say that.
But I just want you to name the bastard. Isn't it Vaush?
Oh, yeah, we can name him.
Vaush is a known anti-white pig. I mean, this guy, he has defended pedophilia. He's a pedo prepper. He's an anti-white evil bastard. Okay, I'll just say it. And of course, he plays into the anti-white narrative. Why wouldn't he? What a bastard. We need to shame these anti-whites. We really need to shame them.
Yeah. And it's not even just that he's a bad person, it's that he's completely insufferably smug while doing it too. Just he has this sort of highfalutin, look at me and how smart I am, look at me and how moral I am for condemning these people I don't even know, just based on this out of context clip where I wasn't present. And he says the most vile anti-white things from that. And it's just, when you see somebody doing that, just know you are not dealing with a good person. You are not dealing with a well-intentioned but misguided person. You're dealing with somebody who's evil to the core.
Yeah. And I mean, that actually goes back to our topic, prior topic, the root of evil. Vaush, if you people just objectively take a look at this man, you can see that, I mean, like I said, he's a pig. I mean, he's gluttonous. He's not good looking. He has the crazy eyes, and I bet you he is suffering from a very deep sense of jealousy. He doesn't. The archetype of Western kind is just, he doesn't align with it. he feels a sense of inferiority when contrasted with the best and brightest of Western kind. And so that just fills him with so much jealousy that he just wants to destroy everything that white people create and build. Just white erase Western civilization entirely. It's always the same story with these people. They are always like jealous and full of covetousness. They're just really mean. They are evil. And you can't trust them. You can pray for them, but the prayer has to be I would say if you want to pray for him, you pray that he receives humility. Humility is the first step in becoming godly. I haven't prayed for him. Maybe I should. But pray for humility for these people. That's what I want to say. But
That's all we can do.
Yeah, that's all we can do. I mean, but do not trust them unless they humble themselves and admit their mistakes. But until then, you cannot trust them. Just take my word for it. But with that said, I think we've covered two important topics, and this has been a great discussion, Ian. Thank you for joining. And
yeah, it has been. Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you everyone who listened. I'm just gonna end the podcast. I want to thank you all. God bless you all. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.
God bless.